You may have heard these words before, but I'll teach you what they really mean. Go beyond! Plus Ultra!
My Hero Academia is really popular right now, and I still don't think it's that good. Okay, we've already done this song and dance before. In case you aren't aware, I made a somewhat scripted rant about my thoughts on My Hero Academia a while back on this channel. In it, I broke down the things I liked and things that bothered me within the series. Now, after some time of self-reflection and feedback, I'll admit that I was a bit too harsh in that video. Just a little bit. Truth be told, I've kind of shifted in my opinion towards My Hero Academia since making that rant, although probably not in the direction that you're expecting. Reviewing my points has made me even more critical and perceptive of Hiroaka's supposed flaws. I can see more problems than I initially pointed out in that video, almost enough to make a second one with actual thought and detail put into it. But that doesn't mean I flat out hate My Hero. I still keep up with the latest manga chapters and stuff. I'm just not as much of a fan as I used to be. Mainly because Black Clover is better. Still, that shouldn't be a problem. I don't want to build a reputation as some whiny weeb on the internet who blatantly hates on the exact same show for clicks. Which is why I'm going to try and fix the issues I see arising in My Hero Academia rather than just pointing them out. I've started getting into the rewrite phase as of late because I think this helps tie my two growing passions together. You see, I want to be a professional writer and director of film when I grow up, but I also want to keep my perception of media criticism sharp, so rather than just bashing on cartoons all day, story rewrites will help me improve my skills in both those fields. Now, this won't be a full-on rewrite of My Hero Academia's arcs. We'll save that for another anime that I have shelved. Instead, I'll be discussing certain ideas that could have been utilized to make MHA a more sound story, and don't worry, I'll try to keep things short and simple so I don't write another light novel of a script like last time. Now, I know this might upset some people who are big fans of My Hero Academia. On both YouTube and the Anime Amino, where you can check out my various blogs by the way, people have commented about how they won't read or listen to my points to avoid soiling their respect for this series, and I get that. I mean, I really like The World's End, for example. It's one of my favorite movies ever, but I would be pretty annoyed if someone kept trying to convince me that it sucked. However, you don't actually have to drop things you like just because someone critiques them. Here in Zed critiques can instead make you more analytical rather than just basking in ignorance. So even if you're the most die-hard MHA fanboy, I'd appreciate it if you take some time to listen to my thoughts. Now let's get on with it. The first issue thing I'll discuss is My Hero Academia's power system, quirks. I'll admit that I really do like the idea of quirks in MHA's world. Due to the nature of superpowers and superhero stories, Kohei Horikoshi can have some fun and give anyone any kind of powers he wants, no matter how ridiculous. Even though a majority of them are just humans with animal faces for some reason. So the real power quirks is their range, but that also comes with the consequence of no real power scaling. As I said in my previous My Hero Academia video, the next villain could literally just be a random kid who's born with a super strength quirk that makes him 200 times stronger than All Might was in his prime. So then they decide to rule the world because why not? I mean, you can't call it crazy because there's no limit to what quirks can be. 'Tis the curse of the superhero universe. So we need a way to prevent that, and my solution is genetics. As we see throughout the series, most people get their powers from a crossing of their parents' own abilities. Shota Todoroki's half-fire, half-ice build is literally just that. But other characters will develop their quirks just because. They have nothing to do with inheritance and are almost untraceable from their parents. A kid could be born from a mother with flight and a father with ice breath, but they end up with a snake face instead. And the series is fine with that. But this leaves open the floodgates of unpredictability that I previously mentioned. Next thing you know, that random OP child with unbeatable super strength could happen. Then they'll have to be exiled to another planet for 40 plus years before their unexpected return in a big screen reboot. So instead, most of, if not all, quirks should be inheritance-based, not random. Now that doesn't mean everyone's getting a full mix of their parents' powers like Todoroki. Instead, most people should just inherit a quirk from one of their parents, or at least one in the same field of abilities, like a lady with fiery hair having a child with fire breath. People being born with random outlier quirks could still happen, but that would be rare. Next is the quirks themselves. They all need to be more situational rather than just freelanced. Look back at Bakugo. He needs sweat on his palms to power his explosions. No sweat, no boom boom. And there are other cases of situational powers, like Tokiyami's persona being weaker when the sun is out. So the other character's powers should be limited in a similar fashion. Maybe Todoroki can only use his fire and or ice to its full extent in certain temperatures, or Eraserhead's powers could be weaker at night when he can barely see. Maybe even Endeavor's flames are stronger when he's angry, which could be a semi-excuse for why he's such an asshole in the past. That would also make his current efforts towards redemption more believable, since he's given up exerting his full strength for the sake of family. Just a thought. But back on track. This is a good way of limiting most of the cast in regards to their overall strength. Everybody needs a boon and bane. It allows Horikoshi to remain creative while also adding a sense of power scaling. Nobody will be too OP if they have obvious weaknesses, and as a result the story will put pros in a situation where their powers are often limited. So they're in turn forced to work together and combine abilities to best certain villains. And one last idea is the chance for a more experimental what-if type of story. What if we got an arc where characters in the My Hero Academia cast had completely different superpowers? This could just be a spin-off or even a new movie plot, but it would definitely be cool. Like, we'd get to experience an alternate storyline where certain characters were born with different quirks or even no quirks at all. Deku could actually be born with powers in this reality, and Bakugo could be born with none, and Todoroki could only have fire powers or something. But those aren't actually the biggest issues I want to fix. Now I want to move on to more debatable subjects that I've had on my mind, specifically regarding the role of characters. And you already know who I'm going after first.
そうして入試当日の朝6時
Who better to start off with than young Midoriya? Truth be told, I have a strong love-hate relationship with this guy. He's not an awful protagonist by any means, but he's a bit too soft for his story if you ask me. Compare him to the countless other shonen protagonists out there. They're all loud and proud while Deku is quiet and passive. That's far from inspiring because even with his superpowers, the guy's still a pushover. Although I should clarify that Deku doesn't have to be a full-on Naruto clone in order to be interesting. While his anxious attitude personally annoys me, it's not the end of the world. So he can remain the way he is. That is, as long as he learns how to shut up for once in his life! However, he still needs a drive, a trait that makes clear to us how much he wants to be a hero even without superpowers. And no, drawn fan art in his journal is not enough. Something needs to be added on top of that. Remember the first episode flashback? Even with tears in his eyes, young Midoriya openly defended an innocent kid from Bakugo and his friends. Then he understandably got his ass whooped for being quirkless. And that's probably why Deku has remained the way he is, to stay out of trouble, which totally explains why he constantly keeps destroying his body and putting himself in danger while attending UA, I guess. But I think that losing in that flashback should do nothing but make Deku even more determined to defend people. If Deku spent his childhood days standing up to bullies and playing hero on the playground despite the fact that he'd lose and get knocked down every time, then his determination to become a pro would make more sense. He'd be established as the type of kid who wants justice for all, even if he doubts himself at times. I mean, Deku planned to enter UA before he was ever offered the power of One for All, and he was no longer expecting to get a quirk in his lifetime, so if he actually tried to build himself physically and mentally before meeting All Might, then him becoming the next symbol of peace would be much more believable. Now I know I compare these guys way too often, but let's look at Asta from Black Clover. Asta and Deku are a lot more similar than some people may think. They're socially awkward, tasteless versions, and placed in the same disadvantaged position. Both have no powers in a world where everyone else around them does, yet they still aspire to be the best there is. Then, through a series of bizarre and/or coincidental events, they get their one-of-a-kind MacGuffin superpowers to build and fight with. However, they each approach their situations in completely different manners. In Black Clover, Asta spent most of his life building his muscles so he'd at least be good at something. Even if he didn't have magic, he was still physically stronger than most men twice his age. While Deku did train for the UA exams, Asta wasn't pushed to do so. And on top of that, Asta's training actually paid off when he got his MacGuffin superpowers. The reason why he can wield his anti-magic swords is not just because his body is defective, but because he's physically strong enough to lift the darn things. But in all fairness, Asta and Deku do live in different environments. Black Clover's world is less advanced and unforgiving, so Asta kinda had to work in order to survive, and Deku lives in modern day, so he has things easier off. Privileged millennial brat. But on that note, we need to address his origin, the way Deku becomes All Might Toda Jr. If you ask me, he didn't fully earn the power of One for All. I know that's a controversial opinion, but let's be real here. Green Boy was just some random kid off the street that All Might met that very day and caused him to lose the villain he just captured. Then following that, he put himself in danger by rushing in to fight said evil villain, forcing All Might to overexert himself and save his sorry butt from the problem that he created. How heroic. And as I've said in the past, knowing that there were other potential candidates for One for All out there for quite some time, like Best Boy Mirio, doesn't make Deku any more special. But despite how harsh I'm being, there are ways to make his introduction to the hero world better. In my opinion. The main idea I had was to make Deku getting his powers a full-on Spider-Man scenario. In case you aren't aware, I'm referring to how nerdy high schooler Peter Parker, of all people, just so happened to get bitten by a radioactive spider that gave him superpowers. And being a righteous person, he decided to use his powers to help people, thus creating the amazing Spider-Man we all know and love today. That's kind of what they were going for by making Deku conveniently run into All Might, but it still doesn't feel completely justified as I explained earlier. So maybe through some bizarre twist of events at some particular location, like a restaurant for example, All Might could put a piece of his hair in some food to give someone well deserving of his power without them knowing. But then due to a misconception, Deku would end up digesting the hair instead and gaining One For All. This would lead to All Might freaking out because he doesn't want to waste his time training some shrill fanboy to be his prodigy, showing that even the number one hero can be unprofessional at times. So he has to get the power away from him, and this sucks for Deku because it's finally his chance to achieve his dream. But suddenly something crazy happens. The city is attacked by a monster, the giant slime one who kidnapped Bakugo, and All Might's all out of juice so he can't jump in to help. That's when Deku joins the fray. Despite not actively using the power of One For All, he still risks it all to save his classmate with no hesitation. All Might is motivated by this act of stupidity, justice, and proceeds to take the monster out. With all that out of the way, All Might realizes that Deku really does have potential to do great things, so he lets him keep the power and their adventures begin. But I can't exactly do that, mainly due to the fact that Deku's body would literally explode upon first getting One For All with no prior training. And along with that, someone can't just get this ability accidentally passed on to them. According to All Might, the host willingly has to do so. However, I think we can still kind of work around those points. First is the issue of Deku blowing up, and I think that rule should be completely retconned. Maybe All Might just tells people that'll happen as a joke. Instead of somebody getting killed from an unprepared inheritance, they could just not be able to activate One For All in any way, shape, or form. Even if Super Zero has the energy flowing through his system, he can't unleash any of it without properly building his body, and doing so would be his objective for training before the UA exams. Now as for the whole willful passing roadblock, this is kinda cheating, but maybe All Might was just vaguely thinking of someone with a heart of justice to take his powers. And since Deku has a pure heroic heart and was in the area, it successfully passed on to him without him intending it to? I don't know guys, just work with me here. I don't think we can fully retcon that rule like the other one because then anyone could get One For All by stealing Deku or All Might's DNA. It's a pretty serious issue and I can't think of a good solution. So tell me how you'd work around it if you can in the comments. With that aside, let's look back at Bakugo. As I've made very clear in the past, I'm not a huge fan of his super aggressive nature. He's still a good character and all, but his murderous attitude is way too over-exaggerated. It makes him less of an aspiring prodigy and more of a living gag who should probably be locked up for threatening so many people. So it's hard for me to take him and his goals seriously. That's why I'd honestly just get rid of it. While Bakugo can and should remain a jerk in the long run, he shouldn't be anywhere near as explosive as he is now.
What did you say? I'll kick your ass!
Bakugo has gone through a pretty interesting evolutionary period. He starts out cocky and self-entitled, but becomes unnaturally aggressive once he feels that Deku Nuts poses even the slightest threat to his place at UA. Then after losing for the first time, he realizes that he's nowhere near the level that he thought he was. His other classmates are all gifted and stronger than him, unlike the kids back at home, including his mortal nemesis, meaning that he'll actually have to try if he wants to become a pro, so he starts acting a lot more passive-aggressive instead. Bakugo talks people down and only looks out for himself, but doesn't waste time needlessly yelling at everyone in sight. The Season 2 sports festival was a clear indication of this. His entrance speech showed that he was still a selfish dickwad, but kept cool unless necessary. By this point, he's even realized that he'll need actual results to back up his big mouth. Even when he's spectating the other students' matches, he starts to analyze everyone on a critical level, kinda like a certain green-haired weeaboo he'd mock for doing the same thing. And I love this phase of Katsuki's arc. At least until the very end.
He's been going nuts ever since he woke up. Man, Bakugo, pull yourself together.
Now he's slowly reverted back to the loudmouth he was before Season 2, and that shouldn't be right by now. He's smarter than that. In fact, he's been very on and off as of late. At times he's acting like a silent edgelord, then at others he's a full-on unhinged sociopath. It's pretty inconsistent and makes me think that not even Horikoshi knows what his personality should be. So as I said before, I would have made him lean more towards his edgy, semi-Sasuke persona for now, because it makes him feel like more of a real person who's matured and has his own goals, despite going about them the wrong way. Then there's his rivalry with Deku. I must note that it took until Season 3 for the two to officially start competing against one another. Up until then, their relationship was just that of two students in the same class, one of which really hated the other. But all that aside, I think that Bakugo should start respecting Deku at this point. I know that it's hard to imagine him ever showing Little Green any kind of decency, but he kinda has to. Bakugo is fully aware that Deku is All Might's successor. Bakugo may become stronger than him in the long run, but he won't be nearly as popular. No matter how hard he tries, the symbol of peace tile is going to his lifelong mortal nemesis. It's like Vegeta finally accepting that Goku is stronger than him, yet still seeking to further his strength even beyond that of the gods. Upon learning Deku's destiny, Bakugo should take yet another mental turn. He'll still be a silent edgelord, but now respect his childhood rival for being the chosen one. In fact, maybe a little too much. We could get jokes where minor characters like Sero or Mineta try to hang out with Deku, but then Bakugo scares them off for not being relevant enough. And he could even fight with Ochako for his attention, causing a comedic friend feud to start between them. So Bakugo would be unironically obsessing over Deku while still hating his guts. That way he gets the guy all to himself. No, not like that. On a side note, I also think that their origin story is a bit too plain. There's barely anything there that illustrates how the two ended up in their current state. As we see through various flashbacks, Bakugo has pretty much spent his entire life pestering Deku for being quirkless. In fact, his nickname itself is an insult, yet Deku has always followed Bakugo to the bitter end, no questions asked. And that's why Bakugo hates him. He's annoying and won't back down, even when pushed away. But that doesn't make them friends. It never made them friends at all. It just makes Bakugo a bully. From what I can tell, the two were never friends. Bakugo straight up abused Midoriya for all of his childhood, and for some reason saw him as an obstacle. Up until he one-shotted the giant robot in the UA exams, Deku should have meant nothing to Bakugo. So instead of Bakugo being a jerk for all of their childhood, it should be made very clear that he was actually very close to... hold on, I'm trying to think of another cringy name for Midoriya. It should be made clear that he was actually very close to Gon Forgot His Hair Gel. The two should have been the best of friends, a duo that could seemingly never be separated. Then they'd vow to one day become pro heroes together. But as they grew up and Deku lacked any signs of developing a quirk, Bakugo would hear the other kids gossiping behind their backs. He was spending all day with a weakling and it was cramping his style, so to avoid looking bad in front of the others, he'd ditch his best bud. Of course, Deku wasn't just gonna leave, so as he continued to pester his precious Kacchan, his aggressive nature would continue to grow and grow, bringing us to the state that we're in now. Also, as one last side note, I really wish that Muscular turned out to be Bakugo's dad. That was a popular theory during Season 3 since the two have similar hair, but it was quickly deconfirmed. Although, I still think that it could have actually paid off, because then his determination to become a hero would make more sense and have real heart behind it. Bakugo would want to be better than his scumbag old man who turned to a life of crime and show that you can be just as strong as a hero. Even if he's saltier than the protagonist, he'd actually have a drive for heroism that Deku could probably never understand. But that story's a bit too similar to Icy Hot, so I see why they didn't go with it. Then there's All Might. What I have to say here pertains more to Deku, but All Might has a part in it too. He shouldn't be behind Deku 24/7. It's bad enough that a supposed underdog has the #1 hero in the entire world personally mentoring him, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I've honestly gotten over the fact that All Might made Deku of all people his successor. I'm still healing. Slowly but surely. But he shouldn't be able to watch over him all the time following that. He shouldn't even be a teacher at UA, period. If you ask me, Deku should be put in the care of Gran Torino as his teacher from the very start. All Might is a huge public icon, so as a result, he shouldn't have the time to personally teach or even talk to his successor, which would suck for a massive All Might show like Deku, but be understandable. This would show Deku and the audience that the hero world is much bigger and busier than he initially thought. Life doesn't always move at his pace. They'd still visit each other and talk about his growth, but only on a few special occasions. And truth be told, All Might is a bit too nice of a mentor. Like, don't get me wrong, he's a great hero, but can't help young Midoriya squat. Even the series acknowledges this because Deku only manages to get control over his powers once Gran Torino takes him in. So I'd just let him learn from Gran Torino from the start. Maybe the old geezer could even take up a job at UA instead of All Might, but it should be something less conventional like a cook or a janitor. Gran Torino is pretty unconventional himself, so it would be fun to see him work alongside Deku and probably get into his own wacky shenanigans. Horikoshi is also a pretty big Star Wars fan, so giving Deku his own little old crazy Master Yoda to learn from would be pretty cute. It also allows Deku to learn about his quirk from an experienced fighter without attracting unnecessary public attention. If Deku is seen with All Might all the time and attends the same school as him, people might get suspicious of their relationship, especially since they have similar quirks, and someone unexpected would find out their big secret. Wait a second. All Might not being around all the time would also help build his character as well. He wants to be a hero and assure Midoriya's success, but is getting overwhelmed by arbitrary things. The media's obsession with him jeopardizes his time to actually save people and get around town. Then there's his strength time limit, making his mobility even more scarce. So we start to question if it's all worth it. Does all the fame and glory really make him a better hero, or is he wasting his power for a fake image?
Finally got everything I wanted. And I'm wearing tights.
Now, I don't really know what to say about the other characters. Their overall development is debatable because it takes forever for any of them to get some. and after they do, they're no longer important. Ida had a big spotlight in the second half of Season 2, but has remained as a background character ever since. So the cast should be cut down a bit. I know that's a pretty hasty thing to suggest because the fans pretty much love everyone, but maybe 2 or 3 characters could have been removed from the overall plot in early development. In fact, they could still be removed now, referring to students to be exact. One of Deku's classmates could be transferred to another school because their family is overprotective and doubts the school's security, even if said student eventually comes back, although I'd unironically keep Mineta full-time because he is just that precious. Anyways, we need to talk stakes. Say what you will, but the series plays things way too safe if you ask me. Even when serious stuff happens like Stain attacking Pros or the return of All For One, our heroes still leave practically in one piece. There's usually something small that happens as a result, like certain characters losing their quirks, but nothing beyond that. Now this part in particular is pretty subjective because the stakes of a battle could be literally anything, and even I'll admit that the ideas I have for pumping up the tension are a little bit too dark. All I'll say for now is that longer lasting consequences in general need to happen. All Might being forced into retirement is a great example, even though I think it happened a little too soon, but that's not enough. We need more drama that actually impacts the overall crew on a personal level. Maybe UA could be temporarily shut down for putting its kids in danger all the time, or one of the students could straight up die. Yeah, you heard me. Although I won't say who I'd pick for such a sacrifice because it would probably piss off 60% of the fandom. But with stakes comes gravy, I mean villains. The villains are those who enforce the danger in the story, and Hiroaka has a very interesting track record with that. The League of Villains is the most notorious of the bunch since they take up the most focus, and as many will tell you, their main problem is that we don't know what they want. The League advocates for stuff like destroying the world order, but most of its members are only there to look scary. They don't even care about this societal corruption crap, and the mystery element of these guys is being dragged out for far too long. We have no idea what rebellious psychos like Dabi are getting out of this, so to solve that, the League needs some inner team drama, and a self-aware reboot. Here's what I would have done. Make the League of Villains disband in Season 3 when All For One is defeated. Seriously. Following that iconic showdown in Ground Zero, a majority of the League's members should have been taken into custody along with their boss, leaving only a few standouts like Twice, Shigaraki, and Toga to run the ropes. But with their forces practically destroyed and their beloved master gone, the League has no reason to go on. That's when their cracks become evident. As crazy as this sounds, it could actually be really good for them. The League's members would become self-aware and reflect on the fact that they're nothing without their leader. They have no purpose and can't even get along. So they'd ultimately just go their separate ways and forget all about All For One. And they'd even make this public, allowing for the good guys to finally rest up. Or better yet, put their guard down. Now the heroes think they've won. All For One is behind bars and the League has just given up. But the battle is far from over. Shigaraki wouldn't be satisfied with this at all. He's tired of being a coward and vows to serve his master until the bitter end. The others are just ungrateful brats. So he'd go on an independent quest to reforge his evil... What the fuck? So he'd go on an independent quest to reforge his evil alliance with new and truly loyal members, giving him his own character arc. We get to know who Shigaraki really is and how he got to the current mental state he's in, basically filling in All For One's role and possibly even taking in his own new troubled sidekick to raise. Then over time he'd build a hatred for his greatest enemy, the next symbol of peace. Of course, while on this mission, Shigaraki would run into old allies from his previous league and get them back into the action, although this doesn't mean that everyone is returning. As we see throughout the story, these guys are dysfunctional and have almost nothing in common, and that will tie into the spread of even more villainy. Maybe best boy Dabi could refuse to work under Shigaraki again, but still seek to cause mayhem across the world, in a way that All For One never could. So he becomes his own boss instead and builds a brand new following that rivals both the League and pro heroes. Admit it, you'd love to see Dabi as a crime lord. He's literally the most popular villain in the franchise and hasn't done anything. So imagine what would happen if we actually gave him an official spotlight and got more insight on his insanity. That's pretty much all I want out of these villains. Character growth and purpose. They can't just be bad to the bone for no reason. While it is possible to make villains who are just evil to be evil like Frieza, those characters need to be intimidating first. And a self-aware reboot of the League would be a perfect way to show that they can do things without the big man breathing down their necks. As for the non-League villains, they're pretty good in my book. If anything, we should just get more of them. Less focus should be put on the League and more on independent villains with their own independent motives, like the Slime Monster, Overhaul, not Wolfram. Although I might as well talk about Stain while I'm on the subject. Here I go again, jumping into the crossfire. This is a pretty debatable opinion, but I think that Stain was pretty much done dirty. I do think that he's one of the better villains in MHA, but lacked a proper level of pride to be taken seriously. Again, I went more in depth with this in my previous Hiroaka video, but to summarize, Stain operating as a vigilante behind the scenes rather than an open anti-hero makes it harder for his points to be heard. I think that if Stain spoke out publicly to crowds about his beliefs and didn't bother hiding in the shadows, it would say a lot more about his character. He shouldn't be scared about what the heroes or government are going to do to him. Then his sudden rise to fame and merch sales would make a lot more sense. Alright, one last thing I want to include in here while I record this. There's also a new antagonistic force on the rise in Hiroaka's current manga chapters. It's called, the Superhuman Liberation Army. They're bent on annihilating the League of Villains, but they still act as a villainous force for the modern heroes, which is great. That's exactly what we need to spice things up. Even though it'll probably take, till season 5 or 6 of the anime for us to actually get to them, but I don't really have anything to say about them at the moment. As for, me writing the script, they haven't really done much. So, we'll just wait and see. But, above everything I just said, we still need to address the biggest problem with Hiroaka's villains, and it's not entirely their fault. They're never given a chance to change. The heroes in MHA never, ever offer their foes a chance for redemption. Not even Deku. They just beat him up, lock him up, and then go back to running their fashion lines or whatever. All the villains are made out to be immoral, cruel, and ugly monsters, and the ones who are actually hot are made mentally unstable. Still doesn't stop chicks from wanting to bang them, though. The only exception that I can think of is Gentle Criminal, but he's more focused on internet clicks rather than causing mass hysteria. If there's anything that All Might and the Pros should be advocating for, it's finding the good in damaged souls. I'm sure that if All Might actually tried to negotiate with someone like Shigaraki, the two could see eye to eye. Or eye to hand. Still, not every villain has to be redeemable. Let me clarify that I still want foes who are rotten to the core and unable to change, because when it comes to media, there seems to be an unbalanced divide between the two. Should modern villains be pure evil, or just misunderstood edgelords? Truth be told, I think we can have both, because at the end of the day, there are people in life willing to change and others who simply refuse. Almost every other shonen contains this trope, finding good in even the worst of enemies. That's why Vegeta is such an asset to the Z-Fighters now. Now, a villain-intolerant system can still work if Horikoshi intentionally made it that way for the sake of divide. It could be revealed that the government actually benefits from villain activity and makes bank when pros lock them up. They want the bad guys to stay bad, so they make sure that there's always a villain to catch, or something. Look, I'm dumb. I don't know how government works. Insert unnecessary political opinion here. Now then, what else to, what's that? What? Deku? New quirks? Ah, crap. Okay, so, one more thing I gotta squeeze in here is a quick tangent. Apparently, the mighty Anxiety Boy is gonna have, 6 or 7 new quirks now. 5 or 6. Not just One For All. They're each a quirk from a past user of One For All, and they're all gonna accumulate into him, meaning that he'll most likely have to master each of them for his final showdown with All For One. So far he's tapped into one called Black Whip, and he's waiting to see what else follows, and that sounds bad. I see the potential of it. I think Deku will have to learn how to start controlling new abilities, giving his character another challenge to overcome and stuff, but I don't think that's the best objective that he could have been given. His current focus should be on mastering 100% of One For All, and that's it. That's literally all he needs right now. And if Deku should develop any kinds of new quirks, they should be from his parents. His mother had telekinesis, and his dad can allegedly breathe fire, so maybe he could learn how to shoot fireballs, or get pyrokinesis as a fusion of their powers or something. And I can only imagine how Bakugo would react seeing Deku with a quirk that's fire-based like his and stuff. But the reason I bring this up now is because it kind of ties into the next time I'm going to discuss, because I think that with all these new quirks, he's going to be way too OP, and it defeats the purpose of what I think the end-all be-all of My Hero Academia should be, and that's teamwork. We all know that Deku is going to have to battle All For One someday, even though that probably won't happen for quite some time. We're not even through year 1 of UA yet, but on that note, I do have my own headcanon on how such a fight could eventually go down. The thing is, I don't think that Deku should hold the spotlight all to himself. He should take down All For One with his school friends. In all honesty, I do not see Green Gerudo being the strongest fighter in Class 1A. Maybe the most skilled and strategic, but definitely not the most physically strong. I think that role would go to someone like Todoroki or Bakugo. But that's good because I want the real powerhouses like Bakugo or Todoroki to hit harder than him. That doesn't mean that they'll be better than him, because he's going to be the symbol of peace. Deku's most likely getting multiple quirks in the first place so that he can stand a chance against All For One's own multi-power set. but rather than giving him new powers, let the various quirks of his allies back him up instead. Class 1A and whoever else wants to chip in should combine their own abilities to take down All For One, Avengers vs. Thanos style. That way they all get a piece of the glory. Wouldn't that be a more satisfying conclusion? Like, All For One believes that he's unstoppable for having so many quirks, but Deku will show him that he and his friends working together, despite not being as strong as him, are mightier than he could have ever imagined. Even Mineta could help out somehow and use the fact that he helped beat All For One as the ultimate pickup line. Although this whole new quirks thing actually gave me another idea. What if other characters could do something similar to what's happening with Deku? Like, what if characters with already established quirks could develop brand new ones over time, giving them more than one ability? Now, don't worry, I'm not saying that someone like Ida should learn to shoot frickin' laser beams from his eyeballs or something, but maybe characters could develop new quirks or abilities similar to their already established skill sets, such as someone, again, with a fire-based power set getting a new fire-related quirk. Think of it like how characters in Black Clover get new spells when they mentally grow and develop. It's a brand new attack, but still within the range of their elemental class. So something similar could happen for the characters of Hiroaka. Maybe during Ochako's showdown with Bakugo at the sports festival, she could rage out for a second and unlock full-on telekinesis, causing the whole stadium to start rising off the ground, but then she'd pass out, lose the match, and struggle to ever activate it again. As a result, she'd start training to summon forth this new ability, allowing her to become more than just a support character. Even Bakugo could get something new, like a flaming aura that engulfs his body as a shield. I mean, Kaminari got a brand new form at one point, and Toga recently discovered that she can copy not only the appearance, but quirks of people she disguises as. So more things along the line of that would be cool. These new abilities would keep the cast from feeling like one-trick ponies, and make them reasonably stronger. God damn, I'm giving myself some good ideas here. Why waste it on my hero? Note to self, cut out the last few paragraphs about, developing new quirks when I edit this. Just remember that. And the last thing I'll address is how to fix the story's pacing. Less training arcs, more action. As I've said before, we're still on the first school year of Class 1A, and it takes forever for anything serious to happen. Although this point is pretty much left up to the writer's ability to draft a consistent plot. I'm not trying to bash on Horikoshi's skills or anything, but he's dragging out the story for an unnecessary amount of time. A part of me believes that this is actually on purpose so MHA can seem longer and make more bank. But that's another point left up to debate. And I don't want to make such negative assumptions as an aspiring mangaka myself. I only wish for more game-changing conflict to take place. Just wanted to throw that out there. And thus, we reach our conclusion. I had a couple other ideas for brand new arcs, like one about a quirkless minority uprising, but that doesn't tie into things that actually happened in the manga/anime. And this video was mostly about remaking already established plot points and stuff, so I didn't really get into it. Although, if you'd like to see stuff like that, let me know and I'll see what I can do. Now, once again, I'll assure you that I do enjoy My Hero. I still find many engaging elements as I watch and read it. In fact, a lot of issues I brought up in the past have actually started to be addressed, like the League of Villains, for example. Which is good for me because I can stop being a grump all the time and actually enjoy something in my life. But I'd still like for the series to branch out more, covering bolder themes and characters. Overall, I hope that you enjoyed the ideas I laid out here. While the real story has some reasonable groundwork, I think some of the new ideas could have made a stronger overall impact. I mean, that's kind of why I wrote them in the first place. I do want to write my own stories someday in both novel and comic form, and I've even started to draft a shonen-like comic of my own. I've learned from countless stories worldwide while working to draft mine, and in turn I've become more critical of what makes the story good or bad. So, like all those other stories, My Hero Academia has shown me the right and wrong way to do certain things. Even with how hard I've been on it, I do thank Kohei Horikoshi for all of that. And, that's all I have to say.
Eat this! No, not that part.
Heyo, Alcatabra here, and thank you for listening, /watching, /whatever. Hope you made it all the way through and enjoyed this video, and I hope you see that you saw the previous one. The previous My Hero Academia video called a video about My Hero Academia. And I hope you enjoyed that one too. But pretty much this is just me talking about stuff I like and want to critique. And I hope that you had fun listening. So overall, I'd like to do more stuff like this. More story rewrites. Like I said, I have a major multi-part one for another anime planned that I'm going to do over the summer, hopefully. And I want to cover just more stuff like that, although not just anime, like movies, TV, and stuff. So if you do enjoy this kind of content, then be sure to stick around, because we'll be covering all kinds of popular movies, TV, anime, whatnot, and stuff that we like, dislike about them. just general critiques, discussions, and whatnot in both video, essay form, podcast form, and whatnot. I say whatnot a lot, don't I? Anyways, have a good day. I hope that if you are a fan of My Hero Academia, no shade to you, because I am too. This was not meant to be overly negative. I just wanted to be more critical based. And good day, everyone. Alcatraz out.